Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Natcat's Bookish Cafe. Today I'm here to do a fall reading recommendation video. Alright guys, fall is right around the corner, and for a lot of us this is the time of year where we start leaning towards more mysteries, thrillers, horrors, fantasies, maybe some dark academia, things like that. I know that this is the one season where I really tend to want to read books that have the vibe of the season. All other seasons I'm kind of like reading whatever, but fall is through and through a vibe. So today I have 10 books that I want to recommend. Now, I am relatively new to thrillers and have just started dipping my toes into horror. So these recommendations, I'm kind of labeling them as cozy and less cozy. I don't think there's anything in here that is very overly scary. So if you're looking for real horror vibes, you may want to check out someone else, but who knows, maybe in a couple years I'll have plenty of recommendations for that. I will go ahead and start with the 5 that I find more cozy, and then we'll go into the less cozy ones after that. The first book I want to talk about is Blood Debts by Terry Benton Walker. This is a YA witchy story. It's queer, it has Black protagonists, and it is set in New Orleans. We are following a pair of twins, Clement and Christina, but Christina usually goes by Chris throughout the story, so that's what I'm going to refer her as. So these twins are both witches. They are part of a family that used to rule over all the witches in New Orleans. However, their grandparents ended up being lynched by a white mob after they were accused of killing a white woman. Throughout this story, we start to realize that that may not have been the case, and that whoever took a power away from the family in the past is coming back to finish the job. I thought that this was a really fun story. It has a ton of drama within it, not just community drama, but also family drama and relationship drama and sibling drama. So if you're into the drama, then this is definitely a book for you. This book has a lot going on with it. There are multiple threats going on, and our siblings are both dealing with their own personal problems on top of all of that. I thought that this book had a lot of really interesting plot points. I will say this is the first in a series. I did not know that going into it, and now I feel really bummed that I have to wait until book 2 because it definitely leaves us on a bit of a cliffhanger. The author does a wonderful job of gradually introducing a new and larger threat throughout this story. I will say that parts of the mystery are definitely predictable, but overall it is still a really great mystery set within New Orleans. So it has a fun setting as well as a fun character. Up next, I have a well-known YA story that is definitely meant to be read in the fall season, and that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is a story following a young trans boy who wants to prove to his family that he is a real bruja by performing a ritual in which he helps a ghost pass on to the next realm. However, when he summons a ghost to help, he ends up summoning the school bad boy who, upon realizing that he is dead, does not want to move on and instead wants to find his murderer. So the two set off to figure out who killed him and is potentially killing other troubled and neglected children within the community. This is a book that focuses a lot on friendship. We also have a relationship between our main character and their new ghost friend. It also focuses a lot on a trans person finding a place in their community, especially if their community has very gender-based roles within it. I ended up listening to the audio book of this, and it was just such a fun and enjoyable experience. I loved the subtle paranormal aspect of the story, as well as the queer representation and the aspects of found family and family that is within this story. Overall, this story I found was just as beautiful on the inside as on the outside. Up next, we have Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. And this is a kind of very eerie, fairy tale-esque story in which we are following Tobias, who may also be known as the Green Man, and Henry, a young wealthy man who moves to the estate outside of these woods that Tobias lives in. Tobias has been living in these woods for a very long time, and his job is to protect the woods, but also to protect the humans from the woods as well. One day he and Henry meet, and Henry shows a lot of interest in Tobias as well as the woods, and so the two of them start interacting a bit more throughout the story. This is a subtly, not so subtly queer story. I will say that the story started off a little bit slow for my sake, but the second half of the story was really a whirlwind of magical occurrences. It had a wonderful eerie vibe to it, very reminiscent of the old, more grim fairy tales that were told. This book is also incredibly short, so if you're looking for a quick read, this is the perfect book to pick up. It does have a second book, however, I have not gotten around to reading that, though hopefully I can pick it up this fall. The next book I want to recommend is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I'm putting this one under cozy, but it is slightly on the darker side. This is a YA dark academia book, and we are following Felicity as she returns to the all-girls school where her girlfriend had died last year. This, I would say, is very much a story that revolves around the dark academia vibes. I know some people struggle with this book because they think it's too much on the vibes and not enough a plot. I would say this is definitely not a plot heavy book, but if you're looking for a story that's set in a house that is extremely coveted, it's kind of scene where the elite students go, with only a few hand-selected people are eligible to be within this home, and these girls are very passionate about the literary path that they have chosen. Then this is the perfect book for you. We have pretentious girls in here, we have snobs, we have obsession within the story, we have paranoia with possibly a smidge of paranormal activity occurring within the story. We also have a queer relationship in here. I wouldn't so much call this a romance as I would call it a mutual obsession, leading almost to a mutual distrust in a way. It's definitely a bit of a toxic relationship, but it adds a lot to the vibe of the story. The story also has a lot of references to a group of witches that was killed on the grounds of this school. So you have queerness, you have witchy vibes, you have dark academia, and overall I think that this is just the perfect book to sit down on a gloomy fall day and power through. The final book that I'm recommending, I'm technically gonna go ahead and recommend the whole series, and that is A Wolf Song by TJ Klune. This is the first book. Well, actually, Silver in the Woods is also adult, but this is an adult story. It is part of the Green Creek series. Raven Song, Brother Song, Heart Song are the 4 books in this series. In this book, we are following Ox and the werewolf family that lives next door. Each book in this series continues the overarching plot. However, we follow a different point of view and the development of a different relationship in each book. In the first book, we start by following Ox and Joe. One day when Ox is young, his father leaves and never returns. After spending so many years of telling Ox that he's never going to really grow up to be anything, Ox, to a degree, kind of believes it. At the beginning of the story, he's still a young man, but he's starting to work at the auto shop where Gordo, let's call him his father figure at this point, works. And one day when he's coming home, he realizes that a new family has moved in. One of the young sons of this family approaches him and starts babbling and asking him all these questions and why he smells so amazing and all this stuff. And he's dragging Ox to their house, and Ox is kind of just going with it, and the family seems completely shocked by what's happening. And Ox is like, hey, I'm Ox, your neighbor. And it turns out that the little boy Joe, who at the very moment is babbling away a mile a minute, has actually not spoken for many months after experiencing a very traumatic event. This first book goes ahead and covers many years as they grow up and they become closer, not just Ox and Joe, but the families as a whole. This is definitely found family vibes. If you know TJ Klune, you know he does it well. Something else TJ Klune does well is grief, and that is aplenty in this series. So while sometimes it is fun and sometimes it's sexy, other times it will break your heart. In fact, many times it'll probably break your heart. If you're a fan of TJ Klune and haven't checked out this series, I definitely suggest doing so this fall. Paranormal werewolves is definitely the vibe this time of year. Up next, we're going to go into the 5 less cozy ones, and I don't own any of these, so I'm just going to step on over. The first one that I'm recommending is the first book in a 13-book series. All these books are relatively short, though. The first one was under 300 pages, and it's the only one I've read, so I can't speak on the rest of the series, but it was a good start. And that is Criminal Intentions by Cole McCade. This series follows 2 detectives, one being Malcolm and the other being Sean Jay, and these 2 people are kind of thrown together on a case despite both of them preferring usually to work on their own. There is a bit of an age gap between them. Malcolm, I want to say, is maybe 10 or so years older than Sean Jay, but he has been a detective for longer. However, Sean Jay is his superior despite being new to the precinct. At the beginning of this book, there is a brutal murder in which a queer man is strangled and then has his legs removed and left in an alleyway. Both of these detectives, being queer themselves, take a special interest in this case. As far as detective stories go, I haven't read too many of them, but this one, I would say the murders were pretty brutal, which is why I'm saying it's a great series to read during the spooky season. I would say it's semi-high on the gore radar. This is available on KU, so if you have KU, you can go ahead and binge the entire series. I really enjoyed the mystery aspect of it, despite it to a degree being predictable, in my opinion, I still felt really invested in the story despite knowing kind of where it was going. I also really enjoyed the characters. This is a queer story, so there's going to be a relationship with them. However, it doesn't really develop within this book. We just see kind of like the initial sparks and start getting those will they, won't they vibes between them. So I'm definitely excited to continue the series to see where that goes. This book also has a good amount of representation within it. Malcolm is Iranian and he is also Jewish, and he's obviously a queer man. And Seonjae is East Asian, I want to say Korean. I've also heard that he represents someone who is on the autism spectrum disorder and is asexual. So if you're looking for a book with a lot of representation, different types of representation in it, then this is definitely the book to check out. Up next, we have a book that was relatively popular last year, but if you didn't get to it then, I suggest trying to get to it this year, and that is Slew Foot by Brahm. In this book, we are following Agatha. She is a woman who lives in a rather Puritan village, and she is married to a rather gentle man. However, this gentleman is being taken advantage of by his greedy older brother, and after this man ends up dying at the beginning of the book, this leaves Agatha to have to deal with the brother's greed. We also follow the point of view of Slew Foot, who is awakened by creatures of the forest and spends a lot of this book trying to figure out who he is and why he's here. Agatha and Slew Foot end up crossing paths and teaming up to work against this Puritan village. This story is a lot of fun. I thought it was a great time. I listened to the audiobook and I highly recommend it. The narrator does a wonderful job. Her voice is perfect for such a book. This story is one of those books where if you're just tired of the good guy taking the high road, this is the book for you, because Agatha very much does not take the high road and she very much takes revenge. So this book obviously revolves a lot around Salem and the witch trials and explores what would have happened if witches actually were real. And what would have happened is that the witches would have won because they had magic and the whole devil on their side kind of situation. I really enjoyed the magic in this story. It's very nature-based. We have a lot of creepy kind of animal human creatures that we get to meet. I also really enjoyed the fact that while Slew Foot and Agatha were our two main characters, we also occasionally saw the point of view of some of the villagers, which gave us a deeper view into the greed and corruption within the Puritan village and how religion was being used to control rather than to make sure that people are living a good, prosperous, and peaceful life. So if you're into witches, into human monster partnerships, not really romantic so much, but more of a you have something I need and I have something you need kind of situation. If you're into books on revenge and if you enjoy alternate history, then I definitely suggest checking out this story. Up next, we have a Riley Sager book, a well-known author within the thriller genre, and that is Lock Every Door. I've read 3 of his books, and I would definitely say that this one was my favorite. In this book, we are following a woman who is a bit down on her luck, and she is given the opportunity to live in a very wealthy and prestigious apartment complex to kind of house sit the apartment while they try to find someone else to rent it out kind of situation. But it has a lot of weird rules to the job, and as she spends more time there, she starts to feel like there's kind of weird stuff going on with the residents and the building itself. I think this is a book that has really great pacing throughout the entire story. I found myself at the edge of my seat. I thought it had creepy and claustrophobic vibes because it's very much, you feel like you're trapped within this apartment surrounded by people who are possibly out to get you. I also felt that while there were certain aspects of the story that were a little predictable, there were parts at the end of the story that really took me by surprise. I have been disappointed by Riley Sager's endings in the past, so I was really pleasantly surprised with how happy I was with the ending of this story. If you like kind of like closed space thrillers, I wouldn't say this is 100% closed space because sometimes she can like leave the building, but she is very much kind of isolated throughout this experience. I would definitely consider checking out this story. All right, and we are on to our second to last book. This is a book I admittedly didn't love, but I think there's a time and a place for a book like this, and that is The Cavern by Alistair Hodge. This is a story that follows a group of people that likes to do, I think it's called like cave diving, which I would never. You couldn't pay me enough money in the world. $1 billion? Nah, no thank you. I'm not doing it. But these people, they go into caves and they scuba dive through them. Yeah. Anyway, from the very beginning, we know that there is something in those caverns that is very dangerous, and these people quickly discover that as well. If you're looking for a book with a claustrophobic setting, then this is the book for you. I will say that while there were definitely parts of this book that had me at the edge of my seat, I was holding my breath. Sometimes I was feeling a little nauseous because people were getting killed in unpleasant ways. I would still say that it's very much in the genre of Jaws and any sort of like barracuda and piranhas and Sharknado. A lot of those movies I haven't watched, but based on the trailer, I would say the vibe is, you know, a rather surface level plot, not much character development or depth, sometimes almost leaning towards cheesy. That is definitely the vibe that I got here, but it can also lean a little bit towards dark as well. So this is the kind of book I would probably go in more for a fun time than for a really scary time. But if you're looking for, you know, just a quick semi-fun, semi-creepy book to read, then this may be the book for you. All right, and on to our final recommendation. We have The Escape Room by Megan Golden. This is the author of The Night Swim, which is one of my favorite thrillers. So if you haven't read her other book, I definitely would check it out. In this book, we are following a group of people who work for a company. And one day, I believe one of their employees is either fired or she leaves, or heck, she might have even died. This is one of those books where it's been a while since I read it, but I know I really enjoyed it. So I'm remembering what I can. Anyway, a few months have passed since this other employee has left the premise, and they have found themselves invited to take part in a team building activity at this kind of almost abandoned building. The instructions that they were sent informs them that they should get into the elevator and it will take them up to their activity. However, that is not the case, and they get trapped in the elevator where they will have to confront all the wrongs that they have done. I really enjoy her writing. I really enjoyed the pacing of this book for the most part. Sometimes it was a little bit on the slow side. That can happen when you are following characters that are stuck in an elevator for like the majority of the book. But I also would say that this book errs on the side of kind of a social thriller. It very much talks about the negative side effects of greed and how much you can lose yourself while climbing that social ladder. This is a story that is going to make you very upset. I remember feeling a lot of anger while reading this book because the people that we are dealing with are not good people. This isn't the kind of book that you read if you're looking for likable characters. You're not gonna find them here. This book may also turn you off from corporate jobs. Overall, if you're looking for a really closed room setting, you have people kind of confronting their crimes, you have people turning on each other, you have people growing more and more desperate throughout this story, then this is definitely a great book to check out. I really thought it was a lot of fun and had some good social commentary as well. All right, guys, so those are the 10 recommendations that I could come up for a fall TBR. I hope that you got some books to add to your list for the next few months. I, of course, am always looking for more recommendations to read at this time of year, so feel free to leave your recommendations down below. And I would, of course, love to hear your opinion on any of these books if you have already read them. As always, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!